Now, I'm eventually going to switch over my format to do Abo one side and Modern Tools on the other, but I haven't done that switch yet. Mentally, I got to get ready for that. And tool-wise as well, I got to go and look at my Abo inventory and work on my pressure flakers. I need to get myself a better assortment of pressure flakers on both sides, but mostly with the Abo tools. I needed some very long Ishi sticks, at least 2 of them. To get some good pressure flake momentum, or let's see, get some good force going with the pressure flaking on the Abo side. I can get pretty good force with Modern Tools on pressure because the force is concentrated. It's such a hard tip that the force is concentrated. I don't need to apply as much pressure to get a flake to release. With the natural materials, antler and bone and horn, it's slightly spongy, which eliminates a lot of the concentration of force, but it's also wider. The tips are wider because they need to be able to withstand the forces of the pressure, so they can't be as narrow or as pointed as the metal of the modern tool. So with a larger surface area, it's just a matter of physics to realize or to understand that it requires more force to release the flake, because you're trying to overcome more area, more tensile strength is in that area, which means a lot of times you should isolate the platform so that you get concentrated force in that way. So yeah, I'll probably have to work on isolating platforms on the Abo side. We'll see. Work on my pads too. I don't know if the pad is interfering. There's a debate whether pads support or interfere with flake travel. Some guys say no, the pad helps to support the flake, and some say, well, the pad is interfering with the travel. So probably both correct. The difference is going to be subtle. What makes the difference? I think the material has something to do with it. If it's a strong, flexible material, it doesn't get stopped by the pad as easily as a brittle, like obsidian. I think obsidian gets stopped by pads easily. That sort of thing. Whereas a raw chert can be supported. You can nap right against a pad. I think it also depends on the softness of the leather. I don't know how spongy it is. Does brain tan work better than modern tan leather? I don't know. I've tried brain tan. It is really, really spongy. I don't like it for a pad. For one, it's expensive, and number two, it is very delicate feeling. If I'm pushing up against brain tan like this, I can feel everything. Not that it will hurt, it does provide good padding, but it's not like this where I can barely feel it. But who knows? It could provide some excellent support for flake removals. I just hadn't got into that aspect. I do have brain tan, by the way. Okay, now this is tricky because heat-treated material is always finicky. So I'm going to be conservative on these flake removals. I can hit above center line and do some damage, but I mean do some effective flake removals. I call it damage because I'm attacking it, but I don't know, it's risky. I do have room here to send flakes in diagonally on the sides here of this preform. I can send in flakes this way to thin it, and then from the tip I can do the same thing. The only risk is to develop an island in the middle. That's the only risk. And I'm already pretty much out of room here and here. So I've got to be very careful. Make sure I thin this tip and the ends before I hit the middle, because if I don't, I'll have some weight on the ends and I'll snap it right across the middle. Now this cast, it does show a nice thinning flake on this side. Yeah, nice thinning flakes on both sides. So that's what I'll do. I got some here. I think that's what'll be sufficient. Let's see. Yeah, just a little bit more to go, and it'll fit into the foreshaft. So I just need one good thinning flake on this side. If I do one right in the middle, that'd be nice. I'm just attempting to isolate it a little bit. Okay. Now these were narrow, right? So I don't know if I'll be able to get a wide one. I want to get a wide flake, so I just have to do one flake. Yeah, okay. Good enough. I don't have to mess with that side anymore. This one I may have to drive with one more, but we'll see if I can get it from the sides. You know, get rid of this mess here, because it is interfering with the mounting. Yeah, I'm running up against it with the foreshaft. All right. I'm going to try sending in some flakes from here, from this area. But I've got to move these edges. This side's got a nice bevel to it, but this side, I don't know. I'm going to have to be checking this width. Yeah, I'm barely able to remove any more. All right, so this is it. If I don't get it, I'm going to have to make it smaller than the cast. If these strikes don't thin it out sufficiently. Well, I can leave it thicker, I suppose. Okay, so that's one thing with steel is these little go nowhere scoop outs. Now luckily there's two flakes there. There's that go nowhere scoop out, but there was also a flake above it. So it kind of did it halfway. But I lost most of my energy with that go nowhere scoop out. And I get that with the steel or the iron tips. Probably copper as well. I just don't know. Copper may actually produce a better flake, but I'm not sure. And antler, I can't remember getting that type of flake very often with antler. Could be wrong, but I don't think I do. One more time. Yeah, try to catch that so you can see. That one, I wanted that type of flake up here on this one. I still may be able to get a little teeny platform here and send a big old thinning flake, but we'll see. I'm going to go to the other side and see what I can do from there. So far, so good. I gotta watch out I don't overshoot with this one. The platform is excellent. The flake path is excellent. Everything is looking pretty good. When that happens, there's a chance to overshoot the whole thing. You know, way below center line, not way below, but it is below center line, so you gotta watch it. So I was conservative with it, maybe too conservative. Didn't go very deep. But I'll just move over slightly. Let's see. Yeah, I got a little bit of width, just a tiny bit to work with, so I can make that a better platform there. It's not ideal because I've got a little step right here. And I hate to go into these little minor details because sometimes they don't even matter. But, you know, it's okay to be aware of those. Yeah, they do take away some energy from the strike. The thickness looks pretty good. I just now have to deal with that step fracture. But if I overthink it, and if I look at every single detail, I mess myself up. So I'm just going to go ahead and try to create a pathway to eliminate that step fracture without thinking about it too much. And what I mean by not thinking about it too much is not letting little details get in the way. I'm just going to power through anything that I see that might not be ideal. I'll just depend on a extra power in the strike, see if I can blow through any little problems or issues. Yeah. Okay. And the problems or issues, of course, are irregularities in the surface. Little step fractures or waves. The surface is wavy, or there might be a inconsistency in the material, like it's harder, like it's just a pocket of concrete or something. In this case, it was no concrete pockets. All I was worried about was the irregularity of the surface, and the edge was slightly above center. The platform was above center line, so that's an issue. So sometimes if you scoop out enough, if you're above center line, you scoop out enough, you can drive a fairly thick flake. It's risky though when you do a lot of force, but I'm kind of wide, right? So it's not too bad on this. All right, so now I really don't have to think about doing anything else, just making it thinner and then shaping it. So I just go to my regular pattern of striking, just opportunistic platforms. That's my regular pattern. Very opportunistic. Attack the thick spots first if I can. Always be aware that I don't want to be too aggressive or it'll overshoot, especially with heat treated material. When I first started, everything that I did was do not break it, do not break it, do not break it with this hit, do not break it with this hit. Every hit was do not break it, do not break it. Of course, I'm riding on the very edge of breaking it, so it didn't always work out, you know. Do not break it, and it breaks. But that was on my mind constantly as the only thing basically that was going through my mind, other than where's that flake going to go? How far, how wide, how deep? Now this is already more narrow than the original in the cast. So I got to be sparing on the trimming on the edges here, if possible. I could always leave the edges lumpy, right? And it'll still be the same size as the other one, as the cast. But I want it to be nice and sharp. Yeah, I want it to be functional, not just overall size correctness. Hope it's not annoying bringing this thing back and forth, back and forth. You can see how they pressure flaked it. Just short flakes on the sides. I did some longer flakes just because I Saw some lumps, but I should do the shorter flake thing. Just downward pressure on the short flakes. One thing that annoys me about downward pressure is you get these little steps. This little chatter, I call that chatter, but I don't know what you call that. Just a bunch of little step fractures. It's very annoying. And all that means is I wasn't being as careful as I could have to carefully push off flakes from the surface and then press downward. I really had to be listening to the snap. Can't be any crunching. Just snap, snap, snap every time. You might say, well, there's crunching there. What are you doing there? I'm trying to dull the edge for another pass on this side. I'm going to try to get rid of that little doober right there. I might be able to get it with a basal thinning flake. Yeah. Okay. Now I got rid of that little doober. Now I can send in another flake in the middle, and hopefully that'll look like a nice thinning flake. I'm going to do it with a pressure because I don't want to make this stem too thin. A percussion flake would scoop out a lot. I don't know. Maybe I don't mind if it's too thin. A percussion flake will also be kind of wide. So let me do that. I'll do a percussion flake. Well, I thought it'd be wide, but it was narrow and shallow, which is okay. Doesn't matter. Okay, back to random flake removals opportunistically. if I don't need a big, long, or deep flake, I just do a pressure flake. If I need to overpower something, I need a percussion flake. I need to get rid of some of this here just behind the step fracture. That's a big mass. I don't know if I'll be able to get that with a pressure flake. So might be able to get the rest of that to pop out with a flake from the other side. We'll see. Yeah. Okay, cool. I was thinking that wasn't going to release, but it released. All right, so I think the rest of this can be thinned down with pressure. Yep, I just need to thin down the sides of that stem. To make it look a little more like the real one. And thin down the blade, of course, or sharpen it up. It doesn't need to be any thinner, it just needs to be sharpened up. Some of the mass taken off from around the edges. Okay. I thought those were supposed to all be snaps. Yeah, I'm trying my hardest to not crush these edges. Little fingernails, step fractures. Gotta love them. Why don't you use a sharper pressure flaker? Yeah. All right, so the real one, these are not perfectly symmetrical. Yeah, mine's already more narrow. Okay, oh well. What am I missing? The transition between the edge and the stem is going to be, I mean the blade and the stem is going to be tricky because it's too narrow. So I do my best to subtly make it look right. these days, instead of saying don't break it, I'm saying no step fractures, no step fractures. They look ugly. They don't really matter, but they do look ugly. They don't matter too much on the functioning of the point. Unless you're a doctor or something, you say, well, those step fractures can harbor bacteria underneath. Okay. I don't know if that's true, but it seems like they could have bacteria underneath those step fractures, so you don't want to have them if you're going to be butchering meat. But it's not like your hands don't already have tons of bacteria. Anyway, I don't think about that stuff when I'm napping. I'm usually listening to a book or something. Or making a video. I'm trying to figure out what to talk about. And for those of you just tuning in, sometimes I don't talk at all during my videos. So you can look around and some of them are marked no narration and some are not. So you'll just have to watch all my videos to see which ones are which. How's that? Alright, so this is a little bit of a cortex issue. There's some cortex there, which is a powdery area. Let's see if I can eliminate that with one good pressure flake. Let's try to set it up here to go this way. Try to set up a platform right here and push that way. I know, wishful thinking, but we'll see. Nope. Try cheating a little bit. That didn't work. I'm going to have to push off a big flake and make a dent in the side. And a new guy would say, well, why'd you make that little dent there? Well, there was a stupid little piece of cortex that wouldn't flake. And then 6 months goes by and I look at it and say, why did I put that dent there? And I won't remember. You know, I won't remember why that little dent is right there. So, man, you messed up the symmetry. Why did you do that? Must be dumb. I was just dumb that day. All right, the point on this is pretty good. All right, so let me try to match it. When I say pretty good, I mean it's pronounced. It's not like really pointy, but it's more pointy than this one, I think. Okay. I gotta leave myself some time to work on the other one. Okay, so maybe a pressure flake can take all that out of there. From here, we'll see. Nice. Okay. So I'm shaping and thinning. And for you new guys, shaping and thinning at the same time is one of the hardest things in flint knapping. Other than thinning a thin biface. You know, further thinning on a thin biface is one of the hardest things to do. And shaping and thinning is hard to do as well. Because a lot of times the part you need to thin out, it does not coincide with the part you need to shape. As far as the edge profile goes. So you end up messing up some of the edge just to get the cross section shaped correctly. Because you not only need to shape the outside, but you need to shape the cross section. In many cases, certain point styles have very specific cross sections. What they call flattened or rhomboid or what do they call it? Biconvex, those kind of terms. Yeah. Why do I get those right at the end? It's because I'm using very delicate platforms. And I'm knapping on a part where there's cortex. All right, I should probably call it good here in a minute. Just a few more. Let's see. 15 minutes. I want to be able to rework the other point here. Ouch. And are these pressure flakes more difficult with steel? Yeah, I think so. On really thin material like this, it's heat treated and very crushable. It's difficult to get the pressure flakes to initiate cleanly with a steel or iron pressure flaker. I guess that goes for copper too. That's why you see a lot of guys grind and grind and grind, so that the platform does not smash when you're trying to apply a lot of pressure. Because long flakes require lots of pressure or lots of force. All right, so I think that's it. I didn't get quite the same look on the shoulders because mine's narrow. I can still try a little bit. Right. It's hard to say how far up they grind these on the cast. It's all the way up. That whole curved area feels ground, but this feels ground too because it's, you know, just the nature of the cast. It's bronze, but it feels ground all the way up along that whole curved area. The curved area on mine is not as distinct because I ran out of material. Let's see. See if I can make it a little bit better. Okay. Yeah, overthinking it too much. It was a little bit too thin there, so it busted out a little chip. Okay, so there you go. I lost my cast. All right, so my stem ended up very narrow, but maybe the discussion was okay. All right, so let's move on. The thickness. Thickness looks comparable, I guess. Let's see. Still can't tell. Yeah. A little bit looser than the real one. Yeah, that one's not as loose. It is slightly looser than a perfect fit, but it's, you know, just by coincidence. All right, so there you go on that. So that's more in line with the real one. Some people might say, okay, well, that makes sense. Yeah, but it might be resharpened, right? Well, let's go back to the other one here. And let's just trim this one and see what happens. I might be able to get rid of some of that nasty looking steppy area. Grind up a little bit higher on the stem. Let's see. I do have a sharper pressure flaker. What happened to the other one? Okay. I had forgotten I sharpened the other one. That would have come in handy a little bit earlier. Yeah, I beveled it in the wrong direction. Yep, sure did. Okay, here we go. Let's try beveling it in the correct direction this time. Looks like I won't be able to strike below center line because of that little error. Okay. So the flakes might not be as long as I want, but we'll see what happens. First this one, just to get, oh shucks, just to get a fracture near the tip. Okay, I just wanted to get that tip thin. All right, so now here we go. opportunistic flakes. This material is much tougher than the other one. Not too bad, not too bad. Hopefully in focus. Might end up with a little island. That's all right. I meant to do that. Okay. I don't know where else I could maybe remove a flake while I'm at making it more narrow. Okay, so I wanted to make it like 35 or something, still around 40. No, I don't want to make it that narrow. All right, so now I just need to pick at it, and I can make it narrow just by picking at it. We'll leave the little step in there. Yeah, because if I try to attack it from any direction, I'm going to run into another step fracture. And I could attack it from this way, going across, but I don't know. It's already 26 minutes. Yeah, I gotta do that technique where I spend an entire year working on something, right? I gotta spend an entire year working on nothing but trying to do tips without step fractures, because that is really driving me nuts. Work on not getting any step fractures near the tip. None of this stuff. None of this stuff. That one, I can excuse myself because there's a little pocket of something in there. But having to come back and mess with the tip and having it look weird, I shouldn't have to do that. Just to get rid of those little pesky step fractures near the tip. You know, these other step fractures on the face don't bug me as much, not nearly as much as the step fractures near the tip. I cannot see the edge. I'm going to pause it right here and then finish it out on the next segment. Okay. Now I can work on this without worrying about the camera shutting off. for you guys just tuning in, my camera, I don't know if it still does it, but I don't want to take a chance if it still has a 30-minute time limit, because sometimes I run over 30 minutes. Like the other day, it cut out at 31 minutes. And then I said, yeah, it's still doing it. But then I ran accidentally 32 minutes and something, and it didn't cut out on me. So it has to do with the actual size of the file too, probably. Yeah, I don't think any of these were serrated. Right? Let's see. Bronze cast. That does not look serrated. That just looks normal picking and pressure flaking. Yeah. Now some of these are pretty thick. I was looking at the thickness of these in the data. Some are up to 9 millimeters thick. That's really thick. So if you want to replicate one of these, it's not crucial to get them extremely thin. But they can go down as low as 5 millimeters, which is pretty good. Especially if they're wide. It's pretty good thinness. I'm going to do some more risky flaking here. Just because I can. I've got some room. What I really want to do is get rid of this lump here. So I take a few shots on the upper part of the blade. Get the feel for it, and then go to town on that spot. Yep, a little bit too aggressive. Oh well. Let's see. See, there's one on here too. Okay. Let's see, what else can I do? I do want to get rid of that, because that's bugging me, right? Let's see. I still got plenty of room on the whip. I'm not worried about that. I'm just worried about doing something I can't fix. Thinning a thin point. It's the hardest thing. Alright, so I got that sucker. I don't know if I'll be able to get the other sucker down over here. Unless I make the blade all warped. Shouldn't be working down at this side of the blade because it looks like it's pretty wide on the real one. But I want to drive, if I drive a flake up here in this way, I can thin it down and maybe catch that step fracture. Whoops, let's see. Not quite. All right, one more try and then I'll stop. Just for the video. Just so I can show you guys how to do the same mistakes with step fractures that you guys do. Okay, come on, raw stone. I know you can do it. It's supposed to be tough. Should be able to carry a flake a long ways. There we go. That's what it's supposed to be able to do with a raw stone. Okay. So now just regular flint knapping, pressure flaking around the edges, get rid of the dull spots and sharpen it up. There's still some cortex there or some kind of weird, not cortex, but concrete. Now I am trying to scoop out some of that edge so I can sharpen it. It is considered shaping, so shaping and thinning at this stage. We're not out of the woods yet as far as difficulty. All right, so I won't mess too much with that crusty area right there. Just maybe one more flake on that dull spot. They did a number on that side. Reduce a bunch of width to get those long flakes. sacrifice some width to get those long flakes to eliminate the steps in the middle. Yeah, I noticed that earlier. I wasn't able to see the edge, but then I lost my dark leather pad. Okay, here it is. So I'm going to have to do that avoiding step fractures near the tip thing while I'm working on these videos. So I'll probably take extra time on some of these videos to do that. Probably should leave the tip rather thick until the very end instead of trying to thin down a thin tip. No, I'll just leave it. Okay. So yeah, nice and sharp. Nice and relatively smooth. Pretty thin. It's still lumpy up there, but I'm not going to mess with it. Yeah. It is now 35 or 36, so more in line with the average. Let's see. 30 to 35 is the average width on these. Okay. All right, so, and then you might say, well, heck, that makes all the difference now. Now it looks like a good point, good projectile point. It was way too wide before. Well, if you look at half of it, you know, the part that's thickest, right, the widest, I mean, the part that's widest, and look at the top half, it was 40, and you measure this, let's see, I don't know how much it was, how much I lost or whatever. It's like 40 by 40, right? Equilateral triangle. There are equilateral triangles in the archaeological record as far as it goes, as far as projectile points go. So it's not out of the ordinary. Just because it's really wide, it does not mean it won't penetrate. There are other points that have that shape and that wide. They just might have barbs and maybe some notches from the base instead of a long stem like this, or a relatively long lower part, not just the stem. The stems are not long on this, but the long lower part of the projectile point. So it wasn't unreasonable to be that wide. But now it looks more in line with North American types, right? I think there's a North American type similar to this, Pelican. The Pelican projectile point. All right, so this is the real one. I've got to get used to doing what they did. Just really cool pressure flakes. Looks like it was, you know, originally oval shaped, and they just pressure flaked everything. Maybe did some thinning flakes from the base and pressure flaked it nice and neat, but then constricted it with pressure flaking. Okay, instead of trying to shape the stem as carefully as I was doing it, it really doesn't need to be that much of a hassle. You just shape it after you do the oval shape. So that's what it looks like to me anyway. So, okay. This is the one from this video. So I'll try to show a good side. Compare it to a real one. And add in the longer one for a nice thumbnail. Okay.